All right, guys, we are back, man. We are obviously on the Etheria Restart train, and we're trying to continue the hype, man. I had to bring another infamous individual on the channel. This is actually somebody that was able to climb the ranks in the most recent beta. Actually, I think he got #1, which is kind of crazy, but I introduce and welcome Vulcan. Appreciate you for being here, man.
No, I appreciate it, dude. Like I said, this game, it's one that came out of nowhere for me. Like, I didn't realize they'd had so many betas before.
Yeah.
I think I saw the previous beta just briefly. I saw a couple videos of people talking about it, and I didn't get around to playing it. So I was keep paying attention for when this beta came out, so I could jump in and have a play and have a real like stress test of the game.
Yeah.
In its state. So quite impressed. It's got a few little tweaks that it needs, but I think in general it's a solid game. But I come from before I started making content, which was about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I played Summoner's War for about 5 years before I made content. So like this type of game is just like a sort of, you know, a safe home for me that I enjoy.
Yeah. No, I definitely get that. I feel like that's like, for a lot of us, is like kind of gravitating those types of players that like the Summoner's War, and we've mentioned that, like the Summoner's War E7 type of games, and it's just like something that's really cool to see because we don't normally get to see these types of games presented. And I really think in this current climate of gacha, we need something like Etheria because we just don't get it.
And like I was saying to you off camera, I'm like, I feel like since Genshin's launch, a lot of new gacha games have gone with the Genshin model of like hyper casual, story focused, very limited end game and stuff like that, which is good because there's a lot of people who enjoy that. But for those of us that want a little bit of competition and stuff like that, like I love this kind of thing. And people are always like, yeah, but PvP's pay to win. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm the guy who plays every game free to play. And I still want PvP because it's not about being rank 1. It's about competing and having fun against other people. And I think that often gets lost in these games.
Yeah.
It's like people just look at PvP as pay to win, so don't have it. And it's like, yeah, but I couldn't be rank 1 in WoW or League if
either way. Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? I'm just doing my best in everything that I do.
So I guess that kind of gateways me into the first question, and is like, with your first impressions of the game, essentially some pain points for you or some things that you absolutely love, like as far as like the progressing throughout the game. Because I think we kind of did talk about that a little bit off cam as well, is that there were certain things that you were kind of able to see because it's like, this is like that beginning part, but you could kind of also see some of like potentially what some things would be as you push the end game. So did you feel like that progression was like, did you like the progression, or do you feel like there were some ways that it could be tweaked?
I like the progression. Obviously the progression is a bit scuffed because of beta rewards, and you know, they're giving us extra stamina refills and stuff like that. One thing I would love to see is them reduce the cost of the stamina refills. I think because with these games, like, I just think back to my days in Summoner's War. It's like I could just endlessly refill stamina. I'm not saying I want endless refill staminas. I think that's a bit time consuming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I would like to be able to max refill as a free-to-play player and sacrifice not being able to use any premium currency on summons, but be able to max refill. And then if you want to summon, then you're spending to summon. Whereas the current state of spending 960 premium currency a day on stamina refills feels like you're now spending to refill stamina. And I feel like that's just like, I don't like that connection as much. But in general, the progression felt good. The 10 refills felt like enough to get significant progression. They started to give us the extra stamina refills, which obviously boosted us. But I feel like at the base level, it wasn't too bad if you were max refreshing in general for the progression side of things. The one awkward thing is, this is just something people are gonna have to watch out for at launch, is like, you know, not re-rolling the passive bonuses on your shells and stuff until you get to the max, until you get to
true.
Legendary rarity. I
get
terminologies in every game. Like stuff like that feels like an absolute trap that it's actually in there. The thing that I do like is with the shell specifically was that, like, once you get into those early difficulties, you can start getting the legendary shells, but they only have like the two set bonuses.
Yep.
But you could level them straight away, and then you could use the imprinting once you got to the highest difficulty to imprint that one onto it, if that makes sense. So you could then get the 3 substats, but you've invested into all the levels of it earlier, and then you just imprint the set bonuses. I like that kind of system. I think the shells, we could have a whole conversation in itself. I thought they were cool, but I think they're a bit too overdone.
Okay.
I think the abilities become a bit too overwhelming, but I thought it was a fun system. It's cool, non like competitive related at all. I just thought the way the characters are designed, where they all have like a stand or a spirit or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I thought that's like a really cool general character design philosophy, because I always like having, you know, a stand, a spirit, a pet, anything like that. And then they put pets and stands in every character.
Same,
I'm like,
yeah.
oh, this is pretty cool.
That's something I was trying to tell people. It's like, it's kind of like Persona in that way. It's like very like you have that familiar with you, or even Mega Man. Even I think they did it with like the Star Force series, where you had like Mega wasn't just like land, or wasn't Mega Man in land, it was Mega Man in Iron, and Mega was actually like this wolf spirit basically that was with him basically. It's
it
cool.
made me think like JoJo as well. You know,
Oh
like,
yeah, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Yeah, I can see that too. Yeah.
So it was like that kind of thing. So I think they've done really well. The general progression, I think it wasn't too bad. One thing that I would like to see removed, I'm curious to see your thoughts, because I think other people may have a different take on this, but the level gating on unlocking new difficulties of the dungeon. I think that's the first time I've seen it in a game of this format, when I think like Summoner's War, X7 and stuff like that, where you've got the, like, I like the idea of, if you build your team well enough and you gear them properly, you can go into the higher difficulties and start farming that earlier, whether it be on manual, you know what I mean, or anything like that. But this one, the level gating made me feel like I wasn't trying to optimize as much, because I felt like whenever I got to that level, I was just at a point where I could fairly easily farm it. Now, that was farming Doki, which is like the easier type boss, but it just felt like I wasn't pushing myself to clear that stuff. It was just like I hit the level, and now like I'm just instantly at the point where I can do it. Now, others may have felt different. This was also in the beta, so we had more premium units, so it could be a completely different thing. But I just like in these games, like, just feeling like I don't have those restrictions. However, it could be a way to balance it out more at the actual release, when you look at, you know, maybe Wales having more built units and the free-to-plays. But I mean, at the end of the day, I just like the idea of trying to maximize my team as much as possible and push as far as I can as early as possible.
Yeah,
but that might just be a sweaty me thing.
No, I mean, honestly, I feel like that's like that's definitely a really good point. Nobody's really brought that up actually, but that's actually a really good point, because I think like that's one of those things that can get like, it kind of starts to look at like the company's core values and like what exactly is the goal, right? Like who are you trying to cater to? What are you trying to get? Like, what do you want players to get out of the content that they're doing ultimately? Because like, there's like, I guess the balance to that. It's like, do you want to keep players relatively close to each other so that like certain things are a little bit more like streamlined as far as like how we interact in PvP? Or are you going to allow those players? And I think that that's even something that's come up, is like, well, it's a gacha, so they need to make money somewhere. So, you know, it's like, we've already kind of seen how like dupes in the game is not really required, which is kind of an interesting thing for a gacha game, because usually they heavily emphasize duplicates and the potency of that, and how that can like make a character like that second dupe, make a character just become a god, you know, compared to something else.
Two things I was thoroughly impressed with when I jumped in the game. One, the duping system, where it's just stats. So, and dupes aren't counted in real-time arena, are they? Or are they?
Like, I don't think so. So that's the problem we have right now, is there's technically another arena that we haven't gotten access to, and there's supposed to be some sort of separation there. So that's
whatever it may be. Like, at the end of the day, it's stat bonuses. So I hate it when a dupe feels like it changes the playstyle of the character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It feels like I'm not playing the full character until I get this dupe, whereas this one is just like, you know, you get your core stat bonuses, maybe a crit bonus, maybe a resist depending on the character, and then like, you know, your damage taken. It feels like I can enjoy the character at its full potential at one copy. And I think that's a really nice system.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do like was that, you know, since Genshin and stuff, I was dreading them putting like weapon banners in the game and having like, you know, signature weapons, because that's another thing that ties into the, you need this to have the character actually at its like full
potential,
not full capacity in stats, but full playability. And I'm like, I just don't. So I was happy I didn't see any of that in there as well.
Yeah.
The other thing I will say is I liked their upgrading system compared to a lot of the other games where you just like, you know, when you summon, you keep every dupe of every summon. You level them up. You fought like that type of leveling up fodder system got so tedious. And the way they do it, where you just get the items, and if you want to farm extra of them, you farm the XP stage, and then you just synthesize the blue ones up. I just thought the starring up system was really clean and user friendly, and just kept the UI and your hero box really clean. I liked that as well.
Yeah, they did. I feel like that, honestly, for me personally, I think, and you probably could attest to the same thing, is like years of like doggo farming and farming fodder and like making like a fight, like the hours you can spend doing that, let alone actually grinding, like say putting the actual stamina into maybe grinding more modules for your actual build, or like grinding the shell, for example, like that being alleviated like takes up so much of that grind, and it's just like, okay, you can now go do other stuff. Like I think that's something that's like huge for a game, especially in today's age. I even think then, like considering like that was like, even for me, that was kind of like my entry to gacha games. It was like, we're kind of babies and we're just kind of like, oh, this is cool. Like, we didn't really even have a concept of like how much of our time this is actually going to take up. And so it's like, I think now they have to be considerate of that.
It was ridiculous. And well, I think also, I don't know if this is a thing, like doesn't China have like limitations on how long you can play games as well? So I think that's putting a lot more value into when they develop games, like having the time you spend be impactful instead of just wasted AFK time or something like that.
Yeah, so China right now has, and that's kind of one of the issues that I was kind of saying that kind of gets presented with like, a lot of people were asking like, we should be able to just refill infinitely like we want to. I'm like, well, it's based around that. There's a difference of whether like it's either coming out of China versus if it's being published out of like, say, what is the
Rare or something?
It's like, it's somewhere that's actually like right next to China that they usually just go to. They just publish.
Okay.
I forgot what the name of the place is, but usually like they have to publish out of a different like country basically a lot of times in order to give us those types of limitation barrier like lifts where they like we can just refill infinitely. So that does become like a big thing, is like they have to kind of balance it to like answer what players are able to even get and receive on like, say, the CN side versus what we're getting here, on the global side. So that's like definitely a really big thing. And sometimes it's kind of hard to argue, like, it's kind of like a governmental thing. It's not really just a gacha thing, right? Like, so it's definitely a thing.
Because I still remember the stress, like back playing Summoners War. It's like, okay, I've got a 24-hour XP booster. When can I start this thing so that I can make the most use out of it? And 24 hours that you can't pause. So it's like, am I going to stay up all night grinding? Like, as stupid as that sounds, like those are the things that go through your mind. And it's just like, nah, like this system's way cleaner, way more time friendly. Because I mean, back when I was playing that game, like I didn't have the responsibilities. Now I got kids and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so like, I do actually like some of these time limitation features. And the thing that I love about this is, especially with the real-time arena system, at least the way it was in beta, you get limited on time with your farming, which to me also, this game's farming system is amazing. The AFK farming, the fact that you can close the app completely, like I could start auto farming on my PC, I could turn it off, I could walk around, then get my phone out later on, and it would be finished the auto run. I thought that was really intuitive as well. Yeah. So, and the fact that you can auto farm something and then manually farm something else at the same time.
So and it can be the same type of dungeon. Which a lot of games, like I think even in Summoners War, they won't let you do 2 PvE dungeons that's like, say, like gear oriented. Like you can't do dragons and giants at the same time. You have to pick like something else. So you got to go do a raid. Like, you're like, no, you can double up and farm the other gear dungeons so that you're not, spending so much time.
Thought it was solid. I found myself often auto farming the modules in the background while farming manually shells. Because you got the shells as well. But yeah, I just thought the auto system was pretty solid. And like I said, I don't mind some of these time limited things on like the stamina and stuff like that. But I think, like I said, my thing with the stamina was I don't know what the the income of premium currency was going to be in the end. That's something I would love to see. Like if they have like, models how much like free monthly premium currency. Because for me as a free-to-play, I'm happy just to use the summons that I get along the way on summons and save all premium currency for stamina refills. Because at the end of the day, it's your stats that matter more than your characters. You can have the best characters and no stats, and you can have the worst characters and the best stats. And the worst characters with good stats are going to win every time.
Yeah, that's very true. I think somebody in my community actually did the math on like how many like the Latice, I think is the perfect Latices that we need for skill ups. They did the math for that per month without any of the beta rewards, which is actually, I think it calculated actually higher than a lot of the other gacha games out currently, which was pretty nice to see. I think like there's a lot of things that we have to like really like consider at that point too, because like even the events have been different from beta to beta, so we don't know which are going to be like the mainstays. As far as even freebies, there's like a lot of different variances we could see there as far as like what are the pre-registration rewards going to be, because then that could affect things like maybe how much you can reroll, or like what your reroll might look like. It's a lot of different things, and I think that like it's been nice that they've allowed us to just kind of go in and we can just kind of get a general feel. I feel like they don't usually do a lot of betas like that. Sometimes they are just very like you just get on and just play, and then you're like, well, I didn't have enough currency to do anything. So it's kind of nice they did it this way.
One question I have for you, I don't know if you know. With the summon system, because obviously we only had the 2 banners in the beta, and the banner characters were in the standard banner. Do you know when the game comes out, like, or what their intentions are? If a new banner comes out, does that character go straight into the quote unquote standard banners?
So that's something that's something we haven't actually gotten a concrete answer on, because I'm gonna say that it's definitely a possibility because of Close. Close technically is the first quote unquote limited banner. And in CBT3, she wasn't in standard. Like, so it's like, because I'm kind of like, I don't know what direction they're going there with, because even the changes that they made to the summon system this beta, we had way more choices. Like, I don't even think some people actually understand. There were 3 choices last beta, like or before CBT4. It was either you picked Chloros, Lilith, or you picked Shiada. Those are your 3 options. Now you can literally pick almost any unit that's not a light dark character and start out with any of those characters, which completely changes how you can start the game out. Like now there's probably like 10 different ways you can start out and just progress, because they literally limited us before to where it was like, okay, out of those 3, it was like, well, Lilith was the only choice. It didn't make sense to really pick anyone else because she was the easiest and gave you the most progression push. Whereas like now you can technically start the game out if you want with, like if you want to go Hell Kid, or if you want to go Rahu. Tiamat even. And I even went Rahu. I seen a couple of other people that went Tiamat, and it was like we all kind of ended up at like the same place. Like it was just like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. So I think as far as the units going standard, I think that is something that like what would you say you feel on that? Like, is that something you want, like for sure, or is that like something you were like, Yeah,
I thought it would be cool if they go straight into the standard, because let's face it, anyone who actually wants that specific character is going to go on their specific banner. But I always think about these games, I always think it's good to have a welcoming new player experience, and to have every character as soon as they're in the game on the standard banner for new players coming in, or maybe people who haven't pulled as much, so they have a bunch more roster to get from that standard banner, then they have a chance to get a new character. But I think the banner system's quite solid. I think it's balanced pretty decently. I don't know what you think, but I just thought having the 100% on the rate up, where you're guaranteed to get that character. If you get SSI, you get that character. But you no longer have a soft pity, and it's a 100 hard pity. But if you beat the pity, you get the character. And I was like, that's a pretty cool trade-off. People who hit pity every time and have to go to 100 every time, it would get a bit annoying, but I still think that trumps the system that we're seeing a ton in Gacha, which is the 50-50 system. Yeah,
the 50-50, I think, in my opinion, it hurts games, because it's just like, it's like, okay, do I want it? Like, I will say the feels bad feeling you get from losing your 50-50 is you just don't even want to play, because you're like, all right, I just didn't get what I wanted. Like, I'm gonna just close the game and get off. Like, I'm out of here.
The way I look at it, like the prime example for me, like to compare the summon system, would be just like Star Rail, where it's like 75 is your soft pity. And then you can still lose the 50-50.
Yeah,
So
because
let's pretend that 75 was your hard pity, not 90, because the soft pity takes like, you're normally getting it by 80, 82 pulls sort of thing.
Yeah.
So like if you're going that far and then losing a 50-50, I'd rather just go straight to 100 and then be guaranteed. And if I beat the pity at any stage, there is no 50-50. I thought that was pretty solid.
Yeah.
And the other thing was that the LD characters being a 0.25% chance on the standard banner, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's something that you don't usually see, like when it comes to like the premium units. They're usually like locked behind like crazy paywalls, or like it would be like a paid only banner or something like that. Or like even with E7, and that was something I talked about quite a bit, is that E7's like ML, like they have two different like light dark banners. They have a moonlight banner, and then they have a mystic metal banner. And in order for you to even guarantee the ML that you're chasing, you have to do like 200 pulls. But getting 200 of that currency is like insanity. Like if you got to save up quite a bit to be able to do a full rotation for that. And then even with the Galaxy bookmarks, the Galaxy bookmarks are random. So there's really no, like, you don't really know. And then even with the chances of you getting something, it's like, if you get something, you get something. If you don't, you don't. And I think that that's something that, like, I haven't really actually talked about in any of these videos, which I'm glad you brought it up, was that even the soft pity that starts to build, or the 50? Probability is at 50 that's like almost unheard of. Like no game is starting it at 50 summons. Like it usually it's funny because it's usually at the point of like when you're about to hit the pity anyway. So it would be like 70 summons in, the rate will start to increase by like 2% or something stupid. And I'm like, dude, like at that point I've already gotten shafted. Like you're saving me like 2 pulls. So like that's not helping me at all. So it sucks.
I thought the summon system was pretty solid. Like I was impressed that you still got a 0.25%. Like I pulled, I think on the standard banner, I pulled 2 Lilies, a Heinrich, and a Messiah, all from the standard banner.
Yeah. I think honestly, we all collectively agreed that the standard banner was the only banner you pulled on during the beta.
Like I mean, the LD banners being 3 times as expensive is just like it makes you not want to spend premium. Like I was like, I only dumped all my premium currency in the last day on summons because I was just saving it all for refills. But I think we'll find the standard banner to be super amazing in the early game, but once you've got a built-up roster, that's when you'll start shifting towards the targeted banners.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like one question I'm kind of interested in, like knowing your point of view on this, because I know like especially because you come from like a lot of similar games that I do, like where dupes are like definitely emphasized. Like you want those dupes because it might take a character to the next like power like level. And I feel like one of the things that I'm interested in knowing is like, how do you feel actually with dupes in the gacha? Because I noticed I think we kind of have agreed the dupe system not being so heavily emphasized has been great, but I also don't think it changes how people might feel when they do pull a dupe, because it's not as impactful. So like,
you don't feel as good about a dupe. Like it's a double-edged sword, because if dupes are super impactful, you feel good when you pull a dupe, because you've got like a 40% increase on your character's output DPS because they got this ability that gives them extra turn. You know what I mean? Like something stupid that we see in things like Star Rail. The thing I found was, if I pulled a dupe of a character that I was still using, that I actually like I pulled one dupe Tiamat. When I pulled my dupe Tiamat, I was like, nice.
That's
a little
true.
fat increase, but it's still like one of my main characters. If I pull a dupe of something I'm not using, obviously, that feels bad. But I still didn't feel horrible about it, because I'm like, hey, that's a good character, and it's giving me a little stat boost, which helps me in arena. Not the real time. I don't think, like I said, I never figured out. I never actually sat there and read the real time arena rules to find out. But some people were telling me that dupes didn't count there. But at the end of the day, I mean, I would take still summoning a dupe that I didn't want with a dupe system which is friendly, that you don't need dupes, than the other way around.
Okay, that's fair, because I honestly feel like it's been
because the thing we got to remember is we still have the targeted 100% banners. So if you actually get to that point where now you're only doing it on the rate-up banners for the characters you want, then you don't have to worry about getting that dupe. You know what I mean? You're taking that gamble when you go to the standard banner that, yes, I might get a dupe because I'm looking for a shorter pity.
True. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Because with the 50 soft pity, realistically, you're probably normally going to be getting it by like 65. So it's like almost like halving the pity. So you're taking that gamble. The one thing I would be interested to see is if they did, what I think would be a cool thing would be every once in a while, periodically, is how we've got the 40 pool selector for the beginner banner?
Yeah.
It would be cool if they, every once in a while, with the selector banner, with the rate up banner, it became like a selector of old units. So if you missed it in an old unit, like, they had the Kloss banner where it was like 100 pity and you guaranteed. Make it that banner, but you get to choose one of the old, normal characters, and you get to like maybe once every 3 months. So that you're not pulling consistently on the standard banner to try and fill in gaps. Like, I think that would be a cool system. Whether they do it, I don't know. But I mean, to be fair, though, we also did have the shop, which I thought was pretty cool. The Animus shop.
The Animus shop. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. For the dupes. Yeah.
Now, is that only dupes, or if you don't have the character and you get that, do you get the character?
So this is for dupes specifically. I think that was something that was brought up quite a bit, was that we do. So when we got to the end of the beta, I think that was something that was like it was a prevalent thing, was that there is going to be a unit requirement as of the current beta for like the Cataclysm, because there's like, it's just a specific things that you need in order to be able to do it successfully. So like Terra Matan, for example, if you don't have Heinrich or you don't have a Veronica to be able to clear that, it's just probably not going to happen for most people. And so
I mean, I managed to outstat it and clear it, but it wasn't reliable.
And that's something that I feel like they definitely have to address, is like, okay, we can have like, great, you got people into the game, you gave them the selector, which is cool. You give them Ling Lao after 7 days. I think there's another thing that and this was the question that we were all trying to figure out, because it's not the hyperlink, I think it's in the events, you have another phase here.
Yep.
Which is another SSR, but the problem is we don't know if it's a selector or if it's just another SSR randomly. Because
I thought it was just him because he was on the background.
I don't think it's him, but I don't know. Like, I mean, it could be. Like, I have no idea.
Yeah, that was just my assumption, but we never got there, so I was like,
no one has that, and it's still not even unlocked, right? So that's like something that we have to kind of like get that information, and then from there it's like, all right, cool, so that's in total like guaranteed that would be about, was that 4 SSRs, because Leon, they give us for free, they would give us the selector, Ling Lao, and then whatever this ends up being. So I know like one thing that was like suggested that actually seemed to be a really good idea to me was like, how like we basically clear all the stages and we're going from like easy all the way into Cataclysm. They can put shards for a unit there that would be good for that specific piece of content. So it's kind of like what E7 does, is like they have like every character that's just good at that dungeon. So it kind of can offset the need. Like you were saying, like kind of would like the idea of like me being able to take my premium currency and like focus on getting my account level up, because in reality, that is actually the most important thing to do in the game, because it gets you into everything. Like if you don't,
there was one SR unit that I never got throughout the whole beta. I had like almost every SSR, and there was an SR I still hadn't got through the entire beta. If you go to the roster, it's the chick that does the speed buff, cooldown reduction, and she also has a speed debuff. At the bottom of the screen there, is it her?
Was it open?
Up to?
Up to this one?
No, maybe the one below, the different version of her.
Oh, so this is the sleep one. She does.
Oh, no. Maybe is it the other one that's the speed one? That one. Maybe it was that one.
She does speed up buffing.
I wanted to test her and I never pulled her the whole beta.
It was definitely a couple I just could not get either, and I was just like, all right, well.
I was just like, I want access to the SRs. Actually, now that you mention it, go down to the chick with the wheel with the mask.
Turndot. Yeah.
What's her skill 2?
It's strike prep push.
Her skill 1 is the dispel. Her skill 1's the dispel. Because we were talking about the I couldn't remember. Dealing 3 hits. It's
80% damage with a 50% chance to gain 2 turns of accuracy.
Wait, I thought it says dispel.
Oh yeah, that might be wrong. Because I think it's a skill 2. I think it's a skill 2 that does it.
Okay, yeah. So I was like, maybe she could be used in that boss. You know what I mean? As a free to play option. I think the problem is the AI. Like you want to purge really fast in that boss. So I was like, I think if they just make free to play units that can end up having a free to play or SR units that can do the key things that are needed in each boss, so that there is an option for people. Like, you know, you're saying you kind of need Veronica or you need Heinrich. Like, as long as you have a free-to-play option that, you know, if your gear's good enough, you can stat it. Like, you have options to go ahead and build it to be able to combat that. You don't want to be relying on, you need one of these 5-star units to actually be able to even do this content
1,000%
reliably.
Yeah, because
like my strat was, I'm just farming Doki and I'm just going to try and straight out stat that shit and then see how we go.
Yeah, there was some dudes that had like 20-30 minute clears. I was like, dang, dude, like that's commitment, because I'm not sitting there for that long. But I think a lot of it also is like AI coding and just like the programming of the units, because there's like that's the other reason why it's like some of those units like become necessary. It's not because they're the only unit that can do that specific thing, it's how they do it. So like they open up on auto with that specific ability, so it just makes it more seamless. Whereas like if you were to use any other character, you would have to manual it. It's I guess kind of like how like the application of Close is great manual, but when you try to auto things with her, depending on what it is you're autoing, she's not necessarily the best, because she's gonna use her skill 3 first. In a lot of cases, and in some cases you might want to go skill 2. So it's just kind of like it just kind of depends.
Sometimes I found it better when she died and they were on 2 stacks of her debuff, because then it just never went. Whereas when she hits that 3rd stack and it goes to the more amplified debuff, but then if she doesn't apply it, like if you don't get the RNG to apply it again, it's like, oh, this is actually hurting me because they're dealing more damage, they're faster.
Yeah.
So it's like if she gets 2 stacks and dies, it's like, hey, there's a clean run.
Yeah. That's like, so and that's also like, I think like a big part of like the progression loop. And I think that's also another question I have. How do you feel with the current roster units that they gave? Like, was there any gaps that you were just like, oh man, like I can't really focus on anything else? Like even I guess like character to resource yield that we got, again, like we mentioned, it was like, okay, we got an overabundance of certain resources, but I also think that like even the emphasis of SSRs, like I think a lot of people were really trying to push their SSR investment. Like, do you feel like they should allow players to do that a little bit more? Because I think that's the thing, is a lot of people aim for the shiny thing. Like they're like, oh, this is my, highest rarity character. And I notice a lot of people aren't actually really paying the SRs any mind. Like they're just like, they're there, but
yeah. So I remember because I streamed like the launch of it, and I was like, people probably got bored of me because all I was looking at was the SR characters trying to put kits together. Because like in general in these games, you get into them, and it's like, okay, when you go into like a dungeon farming, it's like the first thing you need is a tanky team. Normally you want poison damage, because that's that means you can build your DPS tanky so they don't get killed. Yeah. And so like normally I look for like the poison type damage. I look for having a defense buff. I look for having a speed buff. I look for having a speed down, and I look for having an attack down. Then as you try and get faster, you look for the defense down, the attack buff, so on and so forth. And I was looking through just trying to find characters that in the SRs that made that kit work. And I think there will be then Doki just threw everything out the window because everything's AoE. So I just went into it blind going, okay, every boss is like this, and then they're like, oh, here's Doki, which is an AoE fight. But it actually turned out to be not too bad. But it sort of just became with the 50 salt pity, it feels like I'm going to approach it different. Whereas normally I go into these games like Summoner's War and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, I just want to use like SR and below, like the 4-star and below units to make everything, and then everything else is luxury. Whereas I feel like this game, we'll get a decent influx of SSRs where it becomes use your SSRs first and then fill in gaps. Like if you look for a gap you have and then try and find an SR to fill it. Yeah. Because I do think the income, even as free to play, should be pretty decent for getting SSR units early on to have a few to fill out your roster. Yeah. But I do think the SR roster was still quite decent. Like you still had a lot of utility in the SR roster.
Yeah, I actually I actually found
all the key buffs that you need.
Yeah, 1,000%. Actually found that there's more single target damage, which I don't think anybody really started really focusing on. But there's definitely going to be some things where I think single target damage is going to go crazy, and the SRs currently have a lot more single target emphasis than like the SSRs, for example.
Yeah.
A lot of the SSRs, at the moment, they're all like a lot of them were like
It's
AOE.
pretty much, I've forgotten her name at the bottom of the screen. The Illidan looking chick. She reminds me.
Hoyan?
Hoyan, yeah.
Yeah.
I love Hoyan. I thought she was absolutely wicked. And I always love a good BP single target damage deal with ignore defense. I thought she was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, outside of her, everything feels very AoE focused.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that maybe even can be like more of a kind of like a pull in that direction too, where we have more content where it does emphasize the single target damager. Because I feel like most of the PvE progression is very AoE oriented. It's like stun locks or AoE freeze, or like you're trying to nuke everything at once because you're not trying to be in that fight for prolonged periods of time, especially earlier, because you're just taking more damage. Like it's just like, okay, I don't have the bulk for this necessarily. So it's definitely one of those things.
For general progression, it was kind of like Tiamat just turned out to be so good because she was just so chunky and still dealt because normally like I said, I look to poison type damage early on in these types of games.
Yeah.
But Tiamat's HP scaling was just so solid, along with her shields, the taunt, and like I found her just to be amazing for general progression.
Yeah.
And then she was great for PvP as well. So she was like my go-to. I didn't expect to use her when I pulled her, and then I was like, oh wait, no, she actually does good HP-based damage, and she's chunky. Pair that up with a slow, and then everyone was getting Kloss because it was the banner, like Kloss and any type of slow.
Yeah.
And you're pretty much good for early progression. Then obviously you can go ahead and you can get stuns and stuff like that on top. But yeah, I thought she was absolutely fantastic for that.
Yeah, so you know what? That actually just made me remember the entire thing I wanted to ask you was about the PvP, because you actually climbed and you did a lot more. So like this beta, I actually did no RTA outside of when I did the tournament. Like I didn't really like worry about the RTA. I was just like tinkering around with like some of the PvE stuff, like because they did add like a new dungeon, so there was that. But for the RTA climb, I know you mentioned you got the top spot.
I got rank 1 in normal arena.
Oh, normal arena. Okay.
Rank 2 in RTA. Yeah.
Okay, so hey, listen, that's still high. that's still high, right? So like, what would you say were, especially for this like beginning kind of like cycle for the meta, and like what you at least noticed, were there anything or were there things that you would like maybe to see tweaked or adjust? Like, do you feel like it was too much of like a certain thing, or do you felt like it was balanced like perfectly for that beginner entry level for RTA? Because I think that that's something that like for PvP in general, there's a lot of people, I don't even think necessarily that they dislike it at first. I just think it's that it becomes such a hard set in stone meta, and then it becomes super oppressive, or it's really hard for them to do. Like cleave meta, for example. I think that's like a predominant one that you usually hear people talk about with speed and things of that nature. And if you're playing games like in E7, like if you're using a Rand, you're not doing that unless you have the top speeds in the game, the top DPS in the game. And so players just don't feel like it's fun to play against or even achievable. So how do you feel like so far with everything you kind of went through?
First of all, RTA was hard to judge. I didn't really even play RTA for the first like 3-4 days that it was out, because I just don't have a broad enough roster. It's like,
okay,
I vertically invested so much into Tiamat. Like my Tiamat early on was at like, I want to say she was over 200 speed. She was at 200 something speed and like 55k HP, which like in that early, she just dominated. And because I went all in on her, it was like, okay, I put Tiamat in, they ban Tiamat, I lose.
Yeah.
I was just like, I need to build more of a roster before I can do this. RTA turned out to be, if you didn't pick Tiamat or Lily and the other person got both of them, you just lose. Okay. It was basically the Tiamat Lily meta. Lily just paired so well. Like I thought, like when I first went into it, like when I watched the tournament, for instance, I was like, Doki's going to be absolutely busted. But Lily and obviously when in the beta, like not everyone was fully geared, so it was like a bit in between. Yeah. But her ability to boost a unit, like I ended up having a 299 speed Lily by the end of the beta. Yeah. Which everyone thought was ridiculous. Like, hey boys, I've still got like 3 modules but only +6 speed. Like the amount of speed you can get in this game between having 40 speed on your shell Then having an extra, 20, up to 20 speed on the substat roll on the shell. So you can get up to like 60 speed out of a shell. Then you've got a set that's 35. Yeah, the shadow dash there, 17. I think that goes up to 20.
Yeah, it goes up to 20. Yeah, I only got 17 on this one, but yeah, it can go up to 20.
I got a 19 on mine in the end. I spent 2 days farming shells so that I could re-roll that, and I finally got a 19 speed one. But then you've got the Swift Raid, which is a 15%. You've got Swift Rush, which is a
that's 35. Yep.
Yeah, and then the Swift Raid down the bottom, which is like the bonus set, that's a 15. Yeah, there's another 15%. So like you've got so much speed that comes into it the other thing is like, this was my interesting evolution of thought around the game. It's like they had so much stuff that looked like it was countering the speed meta. Like obviously we have immunity on the modules. I can't remember which module it was, but then we've also got the shell, which cleanses you. Which was the shell was busted onto it. It cleanses you and heals you for however much % per cleanse.
I know there's Lighthouse, and then there's like as far as like some of the like more oppressive like defensive shells. There was him, and then the cleanse one. I think it's not Gigabyte. It's
that's the game. That's the game movement. That's the attack one. That's the reset one.
That's that's cool. I think it's Alicorn. Yeah.
Alicorn. So it looked like they had all these things, but all that it ended up doing was being like, no, the actual meta is still speed. It's just now you go first, and you can do all their stuff, and then they get to cleanse it. But then once they do their stuff, you get to cleanse it again, so you're still ahead. So it felt like there was a bunch of like anti-speed meta stuff, but it all ended up just buttoning back down to being speed meta stuff. So the like in the normal arena, it wasn't like the speed cleave like you think of like speed attack cleave. It became the speed Tiamat tanky cleave meta. So what we were at in the top ranks was I ended up putting on my, who's the SR revive chick?
Oh, Sania. Yeah.
Sania, yeah. Sorry, I suck with the names.
No, you're good.
I ended up having her in her modules. What I ended up doing was her head module, like the headpiece, I ended up putting a level 1 module on her so that it would give her less attack, because on defense, the AI of Lily would buff the ally with the highest attack. So if she has the highest base attack, I was running with Tiamat. And so I had to put a level 1 headpiece on her so that Tiamat would be the one that gets boosted by Lily. And so then like I had a fast Lily, which would then on AI on defense even boost my Tiamat. She would AoE taunt, and then you've already got them disrupted. But then every time, then obviously your Lily, once she uses the basic, by that time your Tiamat's transformed, and then Tiamat's AoE nuking with Lily, which is
that's tons of damage. It's just like
it was just insane. And then you combine that with like the revenge set on Tiamat, and you just like, it was just too much to deal with. But I do think like even normal arena was in the tanky meta already by the end of it. Like in the first few days, it was like whoever was faster, and you at that stage you were using the SR that buffs the attack and turn gauge boost. Everyone was
you're talking about Chiaki the Vio.
Yeah, you got to go up.
Yeah, right here. Yeah, right here. Yep, Chiaki.
Yeah. So everyone was using her, then they were using the dragon dude that you start with, then they were using the Phoenix girl. Sorry, I suck at names. But yeah, everyone was doing like the speed cleave, and it was whoever was faster won. And then it started to shift into more of the Tiamat, Lilith, Lily type thing, and then using the revive chick. And that's where the meta shifted to. But then it also became, in the end, it became who was faster as well.
Yeah, and that's fair.
Still default back to that. But it did become the cleave attacking meta was getting beaten by the tanking meta. But then it became who was faster in the tanking meta. But so it still became a thing. But
that's it's interesting though that you mentioned it in that way though, because I don't think like people normally correlate like the tank down technically can still do things like cleave. Eriador can still be speed. Like that can still be speed meta, but it's stall or tank down, and it's just kind of like that's a really big thing. And I think that like with a PvP game, that's like one of the things I think that's going to be like really interesting to see how the team is able to manage that, because I think overall you want players to be able to feel like they can play different play styles and still be effective. I think like even like with what I was able to experience in the tournament, there were some fights that I've seen where like if you had the right pairing, like you could just play slow and it didn't matter. Like there was one guy, Virtual, I think his name was, that I faced, and he completely clobbered me with a way slower team. Like I rotated him like 3 times, and like any debuff you could think of I could have landed, he just cleansed every last one of them. And he did something completely different than what I've seen a lot of other people doing. He gave every last character on his team Alicorn, which is the debuff dispelling character. And I was like, okay, like I was like, maybe I would have thrown it on like, you know, this specific character, but he was just like, I'm gonna just give it to everybody. And so I couldn't CC, I couldn't DOT, I couldn't do anything to any of his characters because they just were gonna cleanse it. And I was just like, oh man, like I was like, this guy.
Yeah. see, the other thing, and once again, because we were in beta, like I didn't get to experience the full roundup of it, but I can see the meta shifting a lot as you get higher up, because you got to think about it. Okay, the cleansing is really nice, but that doesn't stop you getting defense shredded and nuked. So if you ended up getting shredded and nuked, okay, you know, you're kind of done at that stage as well. But then we also have the immunity set. But then it's like the game doesn't really have any good purging units, like AoE cleanser.
Yeah, they that's definitely one of the things I think that like I notice is not really a thing. Like they do have they implemented, I think, Lighthouse, which was good for damage mitigation in general. Because Lighthouse paired up with Bloodbath was actually really OP. Like it was just like, okay, yeah, you're just not cleaving at that point.
Yeah, so, so that's what I mean. So now you've got that, and so it's one of those ones where I feel like it's just going to depend on what most people are playing at the time, and then you play the thing to counter that, and then most people will roll that, and then it'll shift. And I feel like it's going to have a cycle like that, because like and this is where the discussion of, are shells too overpowered? Like, are they too much?
Yeah.
Whereas like, you know, they can completely change your character. So like this being able to not take the chunky damage, and you know, you get the mitigation. It's like, okay, if they have that, like I can counter that by just heavy debuffing, stalling out, and doing chip damage every turn. But all they have to do is change that Lighthouse to the one that cleanses, and that changes the way you have to play against them.
Yeah,
so the shells completely change an entire team.
Yeah.
On the way you've got to play. Like, so they come up with this exact team, and let's just say every character is on this shell. You've got to play the game a complete different way to if every character is on the cleanse debuff shell.
True, yeah, and that's something that's huge.
Team, and it completely changes the matchup.
Yeah, it does, and I think that's kind of something that was interesting for me, was just kind of like, okay, you like, because Sean B said it, he's like, we like, take off your shells and what are you, you know, like, because it's like, it's literally that, like, if the shells make your character so indifferent, and even down to like for example, like this shell completely counteracts that cleave, but if he's not there, then you could easily wreck a cleave team. But in comparison, like if you're doing like say DOT, this person with a Lighthouse might have a tougher time dealing with a DOT than they would obviously like raw damage, versus like the person with the Alicorn is just going to keep removing things like DOT and you know, debuffs your landing, but they're not going to be able to really take on a ton of damage. And so that's something I feel like between that, and then also like how the servers, which I found to be really cool. I always love like seeing that with games being simultaneous, is how different each server was approaching the game. The CN players were playing a completely different game. Like they were. Dude,
that was what I noticed in the real-time arena in the beta as well. Any foreign players, so like anyone, you know, any CN, JP, anything like that player that I came up against, they were all using the same SR dude. If you go down, he's the guy that does more damage as his HP goes low, and he sacrifices.
Oh, you're talking about this guy right here. Yeah. So like they were all playing Victor. Like they were all playing him, and like I got caught out a few times on Victor, because you need to like 100-0 him, and he's not too bad to 100-0, but as soon as he starts losing health, he just gets chunkier and chunkier and harder to kill, and then he just smacks you for so much damage. Yeah. So it was like. I do love that in these types of games, where it's like it feels like different regions always have like a different style of play, and I was already noticing that in real time arena with like things like him. Yeah, and that's something that makes it kind of almost teaches you other ways to approach things, or even opens your mind up to like how you could possibly get through content. Because like I've ignored this dude like every beta. Like I'm gonna be honest, like I'm like he's kind of ugly. I don't really care about him. Like I'm out of here. So I would like go focus on other stuff. But then when I actually sat and read his kit, and I look back at some of my footage from before, his kit's been the same. Like he's just been this type of character, but nobody really was focused on him. So it's kind of interesting to start seeing him kind of come to the forefront as like a character people were actually utilizing. And then with the scaling, I was like, dude, like this guy, you can literally put him on so much stuff. And then he has the converted shield. Like it's so insane what he can do on top of then being able to deal damage. And I guess it almost spills over into how like Hellkid is, because Hellkid technically is a attack cleaver, but because of the shield gimmick, it makes him one of the tankiest units in the game, and he's scaling off of attack. That's like
it was funny.
Thing.
Hellkid's one of those ones, and Hellkid for me was like the perfect example of people getting used to a meta and shifting away. Because early on, if you had Hellkid, people were just winning. And then he all of a sudden disappeared from everything because he was no longer like getting the wins. Having said that, that was in normal arena. In RTA, Hellkid's just amazing, especially like, and this is where I said like the main two picks were Tiamat and Lily, because those two can just win a game. Tiamat more obviously because she just AoE nukes the whole enemy team. Like you get a revenge proc and you nuke the whole team. It's like GG's.
Yep.
But Lily, if you get Lily with a Hellkid, because Lily gives you the 100% chance for him to attack with her, and then it also boosts his gauge up by 40%. Yes, he has that shield, but it becomes his basic attack with the stun. I think it's a 50% chance at a stun, but the amount of times you cycle through his stun, because every time Lily basic attacks, if you have a fast Lily, she's also bringing him along for an attack for a stun, then boosting him so that he can stun another one. Like it was almost like he was an AoE stun lockout user in RTA. Like, with that kit, and then he also has this massive shield and immunity tied into it. It was like, so like for him with RTA, he was nuts.
Yeah, and I think I actually am like really hopeful, like in terms of like seeing more units come to the forefront. And I think that that's also something that like another friend of mine actually pointed out, was that the nice thing about this game is that typically in most games, you have like every character has like a kind of almost like set in stone way that you build them, unless like it's like a really like super niche thing that you're trying to do. Like typically they're just built a certain way. But somebody actually like kind of brought it to my attention, was like, you can actually build characters according to whatever it is you're trying to emphasize in their kit. So like you could say maybe like the shield is a thing that you're using, but you could just want to focus the skill 1. And you can build into that with the gear that you put on the character. And that could also make the character different. I feel like if you weren't
focusing accuracy on Hellkid, then you're neglecting a massive part of him. Like, yes, you want to go full attack to maximize that shield, but I'd rather have a bit of a lower shield and make my accuracy good so that I can land my stuns.
Land your stuns. And that again is something that you might see some variations, and that might make it to where like in like a band pick situation, like if you use your Hellkid in one round versus someone else is using their Hellkid, you're getting two different Hellkids, because this one maybe you can strip him or get rid of his shield faster, but he has more of a chance of stunning you, so you're just locked out to getting your turn. And I think that kind of is like the same thing with Tiamat too.
Same with shells, like with Hellkid, like maybe if you don't have an attack buffer in your team, you use this shell that buffs his attack before he moves, so that turn 1 you get that buff so that your shield's bigger. And then you just move into focusing on the stuns. Otherwise, you could go the skill reset one so that you could maybe double up on your shield so that you're going to take a bunch of damage. You get to reapply that shield turn 2, and then it's like, what am I doing?
And that's actually something that I talk about quite a bit in these types of games, is there's the things such as like overcompensating or over damage in some cases, is like you invested. Basically, it's just the concept that you're investing too much into something that you're just like completely negating this whole other aspect that would be really good if you had even a minute amount of investment in it. So it's like you said, like you can actually substitute that damage that you would just be going for in the raw stat value and just get it from an attack buff, and it still would be giving you that scaling, and you can then still focus on the other things in your kit that's going to allow your character to be cohesive to whatever comp you're using. Yeah,
dude, talking about shells, there's even another thing. Go to Tiamat for a sec and go to shells. Stop. Insight. At the start of battle, increases this animal's effect resistance and accuracy by 60%. This effect decreases by 20% at the end of each turn. Do you know how good that was on Tiamat for Arena? Because it means her first taunt has a boosted 60% chance to land. 60% in the accuracy resistance check. And you've got a chance to resist more stuff. I was like, this being a passive effect in it, like some of the passive effects on some characters, it felt like, I don't really care what this is because it's not that great. But something like that on a Tiamat, which allows you to full invest into her HP on her modules, but then you just get this little passive effect on a shell, which is like so impactful for her arena performance. Because turn 1, she AoE taunts.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you've got an extra 60% accuracy for that taunt. I don't care if it all goes away after that. 90% of the time, it's that first taunt that you need to land.
And you've already built up your, by then you've already, and I think that that's also kind of like the balance behind it, is that it goes away so that you're just not ooga booga bullying the entire time. Like, you're just kind of like, all right, it's gonna lay up a little bit, but at that point, I would argue you probably already did the job you need to. You probably already got her bloodshed.
Like, for a lot
stats.
of characters, the insight's not going to be as good, and the gaze is going to be better where it stacks. So like maybe that's better. But like for Tiamat specifically, where it's like that first taunt is the only thing that really matters, because after that, if she has another turn, she's going to shield, and then after that, she's transformed and she's AoE nuking. So like you don't want to invest too much into accuracy in her modules.
If you're going to have that
perfect passive for her, that just means like, yeah, your first taunt, you're pretty much set. And I'm like, no way, that's just like a little passive.
And that's what I also feel like is like a big thing with like the idea of like, I think that's what really has intrigued me the most about this game, is just how expansive building a character can be. Like, just the shell alone is like, you get all these different stat values, but then there's these unique effects that can literally make or break or change completely how your character operates, how much you really truly have to invest into them. And that even, like, again, it's like things you can think of like, okay, this can work in PvP for RTA, this could work in maybe some PvE content specifically, and these are the things people are going to have to look at. And that's why, like, somebody was asking me, or it was not really asking, but they said that, oh, like, you're only going to have to build one shell. And I'm like, honestly, you're probably going to end up building like different variations of like maybe even some of the same shells, because you might use the character for, say, PvP, but then there might be a double up case scenario where you might also use them in PvE, and you might need a different passive ability that's going to allow that character to do something else. And even just the concept that you don't necessarily have to use the highest value shell to maybe get X result from something, because there are lower valued shells that do something similar. It just might not be nearly as potent, but it can still get the job done. The debuff. The one thing I will
say is it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because it's fun because you got all these extra things.
Yeah.
But it's also another RNG grind.
True. I think that kind of goes into. So what would you say like you would feel like would be a healthy balance for them to allow people to experience and just kind of have more of that diversity where they're able to, because I honestly think that like it's cool to have all these things, right? But if you don't allow players to actually really be able to get into it, or like if the grind is just like, you know, it just takes so long for you to really be able to make things expansive.
Yeah, like I said, on beta, I spent 2 days farming shells just to reroll and get Shadow Dash at the legendary upgrade.
Yeah,
plus 19 speed on a shell, and I thought that was pretty lucky.
Yeah, that is. So that is, yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, it's all stuff. I would love a way to have it like maybe even an achievement, like so, like maybe like a running mission in the background where every time you what do they call it? Reconfigure when you do the passive effects. If you just hit
it's basically empowering, or basically
you hit the empower button there, and it'll take you to the menu.
Yeah. So reconfiguring.
Reconfigure. Yeah. So like every 100 reconfigures you do, you get a select reconfigure.
Oh, kind of like an item to like. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
You know, I'm looking for that Shadow Dash. I reconfigure that 100 times. Give me a select on it. You know what I mean? Like whether 100's too many, like, you know what I mean? It's, I feel like having a way to have a pity in that type of system would be nice, because at the end of the day, if you're going for that Shadow Dash and you never get it and the other person's got it, that 18 speed makes a difference.
Yeah, that is true. I feel like an easy thing they could easily do is like have you like what you mentioned with the 100 is build up a pity basically. And then
inside that one specifically, it's like each time you do it.
So that could definitely be something that would be like super impactful, because I think that that's the thing is like trying to make sure and just kind of managing how much of a grind. Like, you want the game to have grind for people to do things, but you don't want it to feel like the grind is not yielding any like reward for the player.
Yeah.
Like, I think that that's something that like you definitely want to try to stay away from. And yeah, shells can get, and I think that that's also why shells have been probably the most like controversial thing within the game that I feel like gets talked about, because there's so many cool constructs to it, but it also does emphasize, like, because like if you really think about it, even for there to be 3 passive effects, it's like, okay, you can kind of make do maybe with the second, what the first slot's gonna be, but that second and third slot, you're gonna kind of want those to be real specific things, like, and that alone is gonna be a lot of a grind, right?
Yeah, especially when you got the module grind already with substats and stuff like that. I like. So this is my thing with the shells. I think they're really cool. I really like them. The adjustments I would make is have some sort of pity system on the passive effects, because you're already doing the endless module grind.
Yep.
Where you're, trying to get your 14, 16 speed, whatever. Like, you've got that endless grind that's always going to happen. So with the shells, make that so that it's not an endless RNG thing. Make it so you can eventually target it however you want to do it in some sort of pity system. I think that would be great. I do think the imprint system is nice, so that you can build one up, and then if you get, the perfect set bonuses, you just imprint it on. That's not too bad.
Yeah.
But also, I think they need to water down the effects of the shells a little bit.
Okay.
Like, I love the system. I love the originality behind them. I actually really like the way they do gear sets in this game as well. I just hate getting drops of modules that only have the 2, as opposed to
everybody's saying that.
Really good piece and it's got 2. No. When I get to the highest difficulty of farming, make that shit have 3,
minimum,
or make it only that. If at least if it's got 3 or 4 substats, make it have 3. If it's got 2 substats, I'm probably going to scrap it. That can be your one with only the 2 bonus. But if it's got 3 or 4 substats, don't give me 4 substats, one of them being speed, and then it only have the 2 bonus, because that just kills me.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the matrix bonus on it. Okay, yeah, because it is technically like 2 things you're getting. Yeah, actually, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, it's the layering of the matrix and then the 2 substats, which is like, okay, that's just trash. Like,
but like if it's got 3 or 4 substats, if it's got 3 or 4 substats, please make it have 3 of the
matrix bonus.
Set bonus. Yeah. Because it's like, that's just too much RNG. But yeah, I think the shells really fun. It's pretty fresh, but still a bit too overtuned, and the RNG in the rerolling of the passives a bit too much. So pity on them. Tune back the abilities a little bit, and I think they're in a pretty good spot.
Okay. So I guess last question that I'll ask, I kind of asked everybody this: what would be your 3 go-to characters? It could be for any rarity, like starting the game out. Like, who would be your three go-tos?
Yeah, so I'm a rerolling fiend. I play every game free to play, so I will spend days going for a Lily. Listen, I'll play and I'll grind the can up while I keep rolling.
Yeah.
I just found Lily, and if I landed Doki, I would go for her as well, because I do think Doki has huge, Doki, to me, better PvE than Lily, but Lily, a little bit better PvP, but as the game evolves, maybe Doki shines out to be better, because that cleanse all the time is nuts, but I just think Lily's ability to boost one ally so much is just ridiculous. So at this stage, my plan is to reroll for Lily and get Tiamat. So, but what I will probably do is put pulls into the standard banner first before I do the 40 selector. Because obviously in the early game, you get a bunch through, and I don't want to select Tiamat, get Tiamat, then have Tiamat as my next one on the standard banner. So I'll probably do like maybe 1 or 2 SSRs and take a little bit of time on the standard banner to see if I get Tiamat. Then if I get her, I'd probably be choosing... It's a tough one. We need to see if they give us more options, like I said, for that dungeon, because Veronica's looking like a great choice, because one, she's great for the robotic guy with the snake in that dungeon. Yeah. For the steel, and she's also like a great PvP tech. Other good options are Lilith. I find Lilith to be a strange one. She's really good, but I feel like as you get deeper into it, she falls off. Like, she's great in PvE all the time. Yeah. Stun, slows. PvP, when they don't have any way to get rid of, like early on, they don't have the way to get rid of the debuffs and stuff, like, she's amazing. But then there becomes a lot of ways to deal with debuffs. And cleanses, like I said, we got that shell that cleanses up to 3 debuffs. So even if she stuns and procs the stun on them straight away. I mean, the reset is really good as well. Like, I think she's good. but I don't think she's going to be as prominent in PvP later on, and I could be wrong on that take, but she's another like just general good unit that I would look to. But I think if I had to choose, Lily and Tiamat are my two definite goes-tos, because Lily pairs so well with so many things. Tiamat has her best partner being the SR Reviver, which increases max HP and everything.
Yeah,
I always forget her name.
Sinea.
Yeah. Like, you know, you're just set. You get Tiamat and her, you're pretty solid. And it's funny because I didn't think Tiamat would be like a great character, because she doesn't really have, like, often early on you're looking for the buffs, the debuffs and stuff like that, but she just hits so damn hard in that transform state, plus the taunts, plus the shield. So yeah, those two. And then after that, I looked at things like, Veronica, Hellkid. Hellkid was super impactful. Lilith was really good. Kloss was really strong as well for PvE. Not so much, like, I didn't use it too much in PvP, but just as a PvE unit, like, you've got damage mitigation, you've got damage amplification, and you've got speed decreasing for your enemies that is outside of the normal debuffs, which is like with her unique debuff, it's all outside of it, so it's like all on top of. So if she was your only debuffer, it's still really good, the debuff she's giving, but then you can stack other slows and stuff on top of it is pretty strong. So I think she was really good as well, but that's more PvE, and in these games, I tend to lean into pulling, like, trying to get PvP units, and then I'll make shit work in PvE. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
even if I have to farm the slower rate.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Yes.
Oh yeah, the other one that I did love was what's her face, the Illidan chick, the big single target.
Oh, Hoyan, yeah.
Yeah, she was just like one of my favorites. And what I saw, like, so I built her up, but she didn't feel super impactful in the beta. But when I watched the tournament, like, I saw Tamias use her, and she like insta one shot a Tiamat, and I was like, oh, there's potential for her.
Yeah,
I think she's really cool.
Yeah, she's super strong. Like, and the crazy thing is, she could actually almost kill the Tiamat in the Dragon Mother form, if not kill her, in the right scenario. Because it like, again, there really hasn't been a unit that could contest her, and I would say she's probably the only unit that can actually contest all of the bulk that a Tiamat can have at that point. Like, that's like kind of crazy.
But she's one of those, and see, this is the thing where we got to in the beta. It's like we didn't have like perfect sets, so it was easier to build the HP scaling units, just because when they're chunky, they're still dealing decent damage, and that's why Tiamat was so impactful. Maybe Tiamat drops off a little bit, but I still think she's going to be good even when we get to like endgame gearing type stage. Yeah. But I think Hoyan and a lot of the attackers, Hoyan most specifically, because when we look at the Phoenix chick who we all get, like, she has the action bar steal and stuff like that. So, you know, she has utility on top of her damage, whereas Hoyan, everything in her kit relies on her dealing a massive amount of damage. You want to revive an ally, you need to get a kill. You know what I mean? So she's super gear dependent, but I just think she's one of those ones that could be a lot of fun, and it's like they try and kill you, and then obviously her and control is going to be her big issue, because she doesn't proc off of control and she can just die. So you need her not to get controlled, but outside of that, like, they try and kill you and you just revenge kill them and revive one of your teammates, and it's not even using your turn. It's like, hey, that's pretty cool.
Yep, GG. Shoot, man. Listen, I'm not gonna take up too much more of your time, man. I appreciate you for coming through. Make sure you guys go and support Vulcan, man. I know he creates on a ton of different things. I'm actually let him close the video out, because he needs to let you know what he does, how he does it, what his socials are. I have it all linked down below.
I'll just give you one channel link down below. That's good enough. I'm not too stressed, man. I got too many YouTube channels to count now.
Yeah. So either way, man. No, listen. Another creator that you're probably going to more than likely see on the game. You can obviously see from the interest. This is actually, I think, the longest creator video we've had so far, and we're just talking about strat. So I hope you guys enjoy that, because like, it's definitely a game where I feel like for a lot of us that are like, you know, looking for something where we can kind of be more expansive, there's going to be a lot of that in this game. And it's just cool to see the progressive nature constantly being evolved. They're taking a lot of the feedback. And so, yes, guys, the Discord, make sure you guys join the official Discord, give whatever feedback that you guys can think of, because the more feedback they have, the more that they can essentially shift in the game. But yeah, Vulcan, I appreciate you for coming through, man, and making this a fun time, man. I actually genuinely enjoyed doing this, man.
No, I appreciate you for having me on, dude.
Nah, seriously. So yeah, guys, that's gonna be that. Make sure you go show Vulcan's channel some love. Again, like and subscribe to this channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, guys. Peace.